Okay, let's get started. So, health check tips for your plan. Now, I'm making the assumption, sorry, that everyone on the call is working on some form of project role, whether you are a project manager or you're working on a project. And the reasons, and for the whole month, really, like you might have seen that I mentioned I'm doing some other webinars tomorrow and Thursday, and I did an earlier one this month as well, all on the topic of planning, because it all links into I'm launching a new course coming up, which I'll tell you a little bit about. But I know that planning is it just touches on so many elements of a project or how you feel about yourself in terms of confidence as a project manager, how your team feel, clients. It touches on so many different ways. It's so much more than just creating a project plan. So this is why I created this to give you some tips about how to check the health of your plan, and you as well, which I'll give you a little bit more context shortly as we go through. So this is number two. So number three is tomorrow night, and number four is Thursday evening, all at the same time as well. I'll tell you what they are if you haven't signed up for those already. So quick introduction to me. Now, I know some of you on the call are part of the PPM community. Some of you I've met before as well, but still there may be a few new faces who haven't met me. I have been a project manager for 20 plus years. And about half of that, I was running project management teams. The biggest was about 17 people. And I've worked for agencies pretty much all my career, from little startups through to absolutely huge beasts in Accenture, Interactive, and Wunderman Thompson, well, now VML, companies like that as well, and all sorts of different industries. And for quite a few years now, I've been writing about project management and productivity, which is a big passion of mine because I've always been a terrible procrastinator. So I needed to teach myself some tricks initially. And that led me to starting the PPM Academy, which is my business now, which I solely do. And I still work on projects, more consultancy, but I do full day training at companies. I do online training programs. I do one-to-one coaching. And some as you know, I run the PPM Academy community as well, which is a free community. If you're not in it already, completely free. And it's for project managers only. So it's a nice safe space if you need some help. Right, so let's keep going. I mentioned in the invite, I'm giving away a few free prizes. This is all sort of to lead up to the course release at the end of this month. Um, a coaching session. So it's the first thing that you can win today for anyone who joins the session. And I will be spinning a digital wheel after this with all the names of who attended, and I'm going to announce who wins tomorrow on LinkedIn. So keep an eye out for that. And that coaching sessions, you can cover absolutely anything. It could be planning, could be career development, could be preparing for a presentation, whatever you want to talk about. It's completely up to you. And tomorrow I'm giving another one of those away as well for whoever attends. And then on Thursdays, I'm also giving one more coaching session away, but I'm also giving away 3 places on my planning course as well, because it's the first time that it's being run. So make sure your usernames that you're using right now are not your kids' Zoom profiles. I've done that before. I've been Sophie Wilmot on a few calls before I had the PPM Academy Zoom account, just so I can make sure that I can contact you if you are one of the winners. Right, so what we'll cover today. So 10 tips, and each of the webinars this week, same format. So if you do join the others, nice and simple, 10 tips to help you check the health of your project. And they relate to help you with ultimately your plan and your team, but also you as a project manager, like your health. And I don't mean so much physical health, but more like mental health, because I've been on projects which have been really, really hard and close to burnout, definitely overwhelmed and things like that. So it's really important that that aspect is considered and talked about. It's not just about how you do things, it's about how you manage yourself as well. So some of them will touch on that aspect. Then what this isn't, so I'm not going to tell you like an end-to-end process of how to review a project plan, because you can just go and Google that and there's loads of sort of fairly straightforward steps to do that. And it's also not designed to, you don't have to do all of these 10 tips. They are lots and lots of different things that some might resonate with you, some might you don't need, but one or two hopefully will be that you can go and test and try them out. And ultimately, it is just to give you things, tactical things to test. And if any of you have been on any of my training before, maybe webinars, you've probably heard me talk about like the 1% improvements, which isn't my term, but I love it because it's so much more realistic if you're continually just making small improvements to how you work, whether that's related to planning or absolutely anything in life, really. And this is what these tips are about. And it is a broad range to help you check your health and you, like I mentioned. It doesn't just focus on one particular area. So starting with why should you do a health check on your plan? This stat's been around for quite a while, actually, but 70% of projects fail. Now, there's a lot of sort of missing context behind that statement, but that can mean a project overruns. It could be it's spent too much money. It could be because it's been cancelled or it hasn't achieved the outcomes. There's lots and lots of reasons why projects fail, and 70% is quite a scary number. But the reason I pulled that one out is there's a lot of negative consequences when a project like is failing or has failed. And by consequences, I don't just mean for your company, which I will touch on briefly in a minute, but as I said, for you or your team as well. And the impact on the team can be you're overworked. The team's having to work late, which isn't a good thing. Could be blame culture. Could be, well, some of them are just looking for new roles now because the project's failing. They don't really want to work here, all sorts of reasons. Or they might be feeling like failures. We're just not good enough. We're not doing a good job. So there can be some really terrible impacts that can have when a project is failing on your team. And then on the company, they could lose business. If you're like my background with agencies and then with clients, the project fails or is failing, then their likelihood they're not going to want to work with you again. You can lose money on it. General employee morale is low because you're just hearing about negative things rather than successes. And then worst case scenario, which I've experienced myself, is redundancy, which is, terrible, as you can well imagine. And then the impact when a project is failing on you, like the project manager, stress and burnout, like I've mentioned already. Confidence can take a hit because as a project manager, you sometimes feel, I hope you can relate to this, that you kind of like feel you know everything. I need to be in control. I need to know what's happening here. I need to have all the answers. You never, ever will. And when a project is failing, that can really hit your confidence. And you can feel guilty because that project management role is central to so much of what happens on a project. You often feel like you are the one responsible for it. But ultimately, you're not. By the way, if you do think that, there's so many more roles that are responsible for the success of a project, but you can feel guilty. And you as well can feel like a failure too, if things don't go to plan. And also you can build up stories in your head, sometimes that aren't true, when things aren't going so well. So let me take you through the tips. And as I said, some of these you'll be like, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd do this. Great, fantastic. Others may get you to think a little bit differently, but my aim is just to give you at least one thing that you could take away and go, actually, that makes sense for me. I'm going to go and try it out. So let's start with a pretty standard, obvious one, hopefully, is do you know or know why you're doing this project? So this is definitely very much a team related one. And what I mean by this, it's sometimes very easy to get focused on the scope and the deliverables. As I said there, all for good reason. You need to get that stuff done. But too much focus on the what means you can lose focus on the why. And the why ultimately helps you make better decisions. It helps you prioritize. It helps you think differently and focus. The why isn't a deliverable. It's like the purpose of the project. It should be quite simple. And without it, it can decrease the accountability with the team because they just focus on, I just need to get this done, not looking at the bigger picture of why you're doing it. And it stops you asking the right questions, and sometimes doing the right work or making the right decisions. So some of the checks you can do is if you asked anyone on the project, why you're doing it, would they provide you with a consistent answer? And if they don't, that's a good sign that you need to come up with a better description of why you're doing this. You want to simplify the why to the impact the project is having, not what the deliverables are. So it should just be a simple statement. If you don't have one, create it, agree it, and then just use it. It's as simple as that. And use the why question then to question how you work, what you do. Because if your why, as I said, it's not a deliverable. We're doing this to improve the lives of this particular demographic. That's not a deliverable. But if you want to talk about a certain decision on the project, or I don't know, you're constantly getting pulled into meetings. You're like, are these meetings going to help us improve the lives of this demographic? Probably not. Okay, which one is? It's to raise it up a little bit and take yourself away from the day to day. So that's the why. Do you all know why you're doing this project? One you should ask right at the start, but if you don't know it halfway through, it's likely you're going to be working on potentially the wrong things, or it's not going to have the impact, or it might be deemed a failure when you get to the final sort of outputs and results of the project. The next one is, how many questions am I being asked? So as a project manager, so this is very much on you. So questions, you shouldn't you should discourage asking questions, because questions, are a good thing. You explore ideas, you work things out, you remove assumptions, all that type of stuff. But you need to be aware as a project manager, like the types of questions you're being asked, but then how often as well. So questions like, what's the plan this week? What happened last week? How are we getting on? How are we tracking against the plan? What do you need from me in the next few weeks? Now, they all sound like perfectly reasonable questions, but if you're being asked these questions all the time, then it's likely that your team aren't aligned, or your client. And what it's actually saying is this is much more all on you. You're controlling too much information. And when it's too much on you and you know too much and you're too much in control as a PM, then you're not utilizing the team around you. And you're more likely going to have some problems on a project because you're thinking about getting things done versus the expertise on a project are thinking more about the best way to do things or the potential problems they might have and things like that. So how you're communicating the plan to whoever is receiving it, it might mean that you need to simplify things a bit more. Sending out a project plan, a real detailed Gantt chart, might look good. You might feel very good about it as well. But if people aren't looking at it and understanding it, then it's a problem. So tip number 2 is think about how many questions you're being asked, what type of questions, and does that mean that people actually don't really know what needs to happen and when, and how can you improve that? And it links into this next one, number 3. Can the next 2 weeks run itself? Think about that question right now. If you're a project manager, if you weren't here tomorrow, could it just happen without you? Everyone knows what's going on. They know where to go. Forgetting, I know there's some individuals who are just a bit of a nightmare and forget stuff and don't turn up for meetings and things like that. But is it understood? Because as a project manager, could you go on holiday without having to do tons and tons of handover notes? Now, I've experienced that pain of being so busy in those last few days, trying to document everything, tell everybody what to do, and then it feeds into like the next day as well, which isn't good in terms of like your holiday. It's not a good thing. So ask yourself, could the plan just be run for the next 2 weeks if you're not around? And if the answer is no, that's why I said it links to the last point. It's a bit of a red flag that you're in too much control. You're not communicating enough. And it's a really good test, simple question to ask yourself, how much your team and client know about what's happening and what needs to happen. Because again, if they're all reliant on you, they're not thinking enough, they're not taking enough accountability. And it might feel good as a PM that you feel in control and everyone's coming to you and you're like, I feel very important. Look how valuable I am. But actually, it can have a negative impact on the health of your project because, as I said, you're not getting people thinking enough about what needs to be done and when. So, next tip, number 4, are you repeating the same mistakes? Now, again, for some of you who've joined some other webinars or been on some of my training, you would have seen this quote from me. It's not my quote, but it's just one that I love. Mistakes repeated twice. Oh, sorry, a mistake repeated twice is a decision. And mistakes aren't always big blocking issues. It's often the small mistakes that can have the biggest impact. And let me sorry, just go back slightly because they creep up on you. One layers onto the next one, and then that has that compounding effect on your plan's progress. Because the confidence, like in your stakeholders, might start to decrease a little bit in the plan that you have, or you or the team, and they can wear away like at the morale of the team as well. And sometimes small mistakes are actually harder to rectify because they don't get the same level of attention as the big ones. But as a project manager, you need to be aware of all these little mistakes that are happening, focus in on them and fix them because your plan will be your plan will be healthier because there's that compounding effect. All those little mistakes add on a bit more time, a bit more misunderstanding, and another assumption or whatever it might be, and that ultimately will come back in more time, more misunderstandings, and that's going to impact your plan as well. So track your mistakes as they go, because it's a really good way to manage your confidence as a PM, because you're recognizing things that happen. Again, when problems build up, it can be a little bit overwhelming. You're thinking about it in your head, bit of butterflies in your stomach, bit of an uncomfortable feeling. But if you're tracking them and doing something about them, then you will feel better. Ask what could you improve upon next week in your project meetings and focus on, like I said earlier, those 1% improvements because it's realistic. If you're thinking about big changes, it's much, much harder. It's more overwhelming, but those little ones are much more important, in my opinion. Obviously, the big ones can derail you as well, but these little ones definitely can over time, and they come up and surprise you a bit further down the line. Right, number 5 is traffic light yourself. And again, this is from a project health point of view, this is looking at you because you are really central to the health of a project as a project manager. And how you feel as a project manager will and can have a big impact on how well the plan is managed and its health. Because like I've said already, being a project manager, it can be overwhelming and you can get caught up with everything that's going on around you, which can have a big impact on your own well-being and how you think. And if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, there's too much going on, you're not going to think that clearly, you're not going to think in the right places, and you're going to get a bit of brain fog as well. So asking yourself some impactful questions, and I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean by this traffic light system. It's just a really good way to catch yourself before you're struggling too much. So to create one for yourself, it's quite simply correct description. What does green mean for you? Is it you feel confident, in control, and you're happy with the plan and what's going on? Fantastic. If you are green, make sure you're not feeling too comfortable because that might make you a little bit not thinking ahead in terms of what could go wrong. But generally, the project is going well. So if you say I'm green, that's a good place to be. Amber, I'm feeling amber this week. It's tough. We're doing okay, but I'm not feeling in complete control. There's some things that I'm worrying about right now. A few things that just keep coming back into my mind. And if you have that feeling that something might be wrong, the chances are it probably will be at some point. So you need to do something about it. So amber is all about you need to take some form of action to deal with it, even if it turns out that actually the problem isn't there. And red, like I described at the start, when I've been massively overwhelmed before on projects, this is it. You are feeling really worried about this. You're not feeling in control. You're not sure what to do to fix this. If you're like, I'm definitely a red, that is, don't be precious. Get some help. Speak to someone, whether it's someone in your team, your manager, someone outside of work. It doesn't matter. Just speak to someone. You can, but it's very, very hard to manage it yourself when you're in this state. So think about, for this tip, what are your green, amber, and reds? What questions could you ask yourself on a regular basis? Because as I said, if you're leaning into amber and red, that means the plan, there's going to be problems on your plan. And ultimately, that's going to fail, or it's not going to be a success, however you want to describe it. So, this is very much about you because you are central to this as a project manager. Next one, number six, ask a project manager to review your plan. Let me know if you've ever done this or have done this in the chat as well. So I just used this word before as well. Don't be precious. So what I mean by this is don't worry about what other people think in terms of they're going to spot something wrong with this or they're not going to think I'm good enough because I haven't put this down or documented that. Like I've shared loads of documents before that had spelling mistakes in grammar. My grammar's terrible. I use Grammarly all the time to try and help with that. And you may well have spotted some in this presentation. Fine, I can live with it. It's not the most important thing. But it doesn't stop me from doing a presentation like this. And this is often because you've looked at something multiple times and you just get this weird blindness to it. And that can be spelling, but that can also be mistakes. It can be things that are really, really obvious that you go, I don't know why I didn't think of that. And it's the same for your project plan. It's the one document you probably look at the most as a project manager. So what have you missed? And ask a fellow project manager to review your plan and just do it regularly. Talk them through it, what's happening and when, and you'll be amazed at what they spot that you didn't see or think of. And the most common feedback when I used to do this for others was, what happens when that happens? And they were like, oh, actually, good point. Yeah, we need to think about that. And it wasn't like, oh, look at me, I'm amazing, I've come up with all these ideas. It was like, oh, thank God we did this because we spotted this now. And I've done it vice versa as well. So you spot the really obvious things. Just talk them through it. As I said, what's happening, why. Use your colleagues, and it doesn't have to be a project manager. You might be on your own as a PM. It's just anybody who you can work with, and then ultimately return the favour as well, because it obviously goes both ways. And yeah, Mark, you were just saying, oh, Sasha, you saying first, actually, you ask PM colleague to review and critique. Yeah, really good. It should be like the default like process within project management teams, especially when it comes to plans and more complex plans, regular reviews as teams or as individuals. And Mark, you mentioned review deliverables, peer review as well. It can be anything really. Just don't do it all on your own, I think is the point here. Great. Okay. Number 7 is how much are you thinking about the next day when you finish work? That dreaded, you cannot get it out of your head, loads and loads of things ticking over. And even though you've shut your laptop, it's still going around and around your head about what you need to do the next day. Hopefully you don't have that this evening. But it does happen, especially when you're like overworked or overwhelmed as well. And you might say, what's this got to do with a project plan health check? But if you're constantly thinking about work after work, it's probably a sign that you're not in control of the plan and problems might already be occurring, or you fight them off, or they're coming your way because you don't have the confidence in the plan, in the things that are happening. And this is in some cases like the early stages leading to overwhelm, leading to burnout, leading to stress as well. And if you're experiencing this, there isn't a simple fix. But the first thing I would do, and I did this myself when I was in a particularly difficult moment, was it's only a job. And not everybody can say that, but most people in most jobs can go, it's just a job at the end of the day. It's only so much I should be worrying about this. So start there. But after there, more tactical things are just writing down some of the things that need to get done or the problems you need to fix. The simple act of writing it down lets you then just pinpoint what really matters and what to focus on. And then just do the classic, and it's a bit of a cliche, but just do one thing, just get it done. I know there might be 100 other things going on in your head, but get that one thing done and move on to the next. You will 100% feel just a little bit better, and then you get into that rhythm and things like that. So really think about that. If it is really a regular occurrence for you from a more of a stressful point of view, if you're really excited about work and coming up with new ideas, that's okay, but not if things are bothering you. Right, the next one, number 8, is your plan changing too much? I kind of got a feeling that lots of you already go, oh God, yes, I can relate to that. I know this is like a common challenge that people have brought into like the PPM community and the ones who've like early sign up wait lists for the planning course as well. Plans changing a lot. Now, the reason why your plan is changing too much, it could be many, many things, but ultimately, if this is happening, then it's probably a problem. It might not be, but it probably is. And then the chances of that project being successful are reduced because if you're managing change all the time to the plan, you're not thinking further ahead. You're not really thinking about what really matters. You're not thinking about the why. You're just trying to just get stuff done and replanning and things like that. Um, so you might not feel in control, or it could be that it's changing too much. You're not actually updating the plan anymore. And I've seen that before with some PMs where they're just not updating, so they just simply don't have the time. Or you might be meeting with the team all the time to replan, or you're having to continually ask the team what are they working on or what they're doing, things like that as well. So they're all signs that you are having to change the plan too much. And the first thing I would always do when you're working with a team is to go, why is this happening? Why do you think this? Just go around the table, give me one thing you think why we have to keep replanning, keep changing. And the answers will probably be pretty obvious, but you might get one or two things that you go, oh, that's a good idea or good thought. Maybe we could change that. And if the answer to fix the problem, the overarching problem seems big and daunting and hard, then just simplify it right down. Going back to that 1% approach, just go, well, okay, well, we can't change that right now, but what's the one thing we could do to improve this rather than fix it right now? And what will happen if we don't? Because you want to be able to take action here. You don't just accept this is the norm. You want to be able to take action. And in some cases, those small incremental improvements you take are sometimes enough. You don't have to get to that final, what you thought was to fix it all. It could just be make a few improvements, and that is enough to get you through and to get you to an acceptable stage, and you're all feeling more in control of the plan again as well. Right. Number 9, nearly there. I'm busy every day, but oh, there you go. I've just spotted a spelling mistake, but not sure on what. Missing the knots there. There you go. I proved my point earlier. I'm consistently bad with my spelling and grammar. Um, so you may say to me, yes, of course I'm busy. I'm always busy. And as a project manager, we often are busy because there's so many things you could be doing, improving, fixing, talking about, meeting, etc., etc. But busy doesn't mean you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Um, it doesn't mean you're busy on the right things. Are you looking at the bigger picture when it comes to your plan and your project? Um, Busy, and true story, I've went up to my boss, this is quite a few years ago now, and I was basically bragging about how many meetings that I was in all the time because he was asking me if I could help him with something. I was like, I can't, I'm in meetings all day and I'm really busy. Yeah, tomorrow's the same, back to back and back to back. Thinking that I was like, oh, look how important I am. I'm in all these meetings. I must be really, really popular and needed and valuable. But in reality, I was just saying yes to far too much, going to meetings that I didn't really need to be in. And I wasn't doing anything other than ticking the boxes in terms of meeting attendance. Emails the same, always replying to emails super fast. Look at all my emails I've got to get back to. Oh, yeah, I haven't got time to do this. I haven't got time to do that. Oh, yeah, I've got that problem because, yeah, I got so many emails, so many meetings. But really, I should have been looking at myself and going, well, what am I doing? What value am I bringing here? I'm not taking any action. Now, I'm not saying you can just say no to all meetings, but there's always something you can do to make those meetings more efficient. Or you could be more efficient in them, or make them more productive, or merge meetings, whatever it is. So always regularly be thinking about how busy you are, but are you busy in the right on the right things at the right time? Because if you're not, going back to the whole point of this webinar, your plans are going to start to struggle as well because they're not paying enough attention to what really matters when it comes to managing that plan, managing that team, looking further ahead when it comes to problems and things like that. Right, number 10. Now, are we short-term focused? So this is definitely very much a team thing. Now, linked to the last one, when you're busy, it's very easy to get sucked into what's happening today or this week. Like even if it's valuable work, it is making a difference. But you've got a more short-term focus. You've got loads going on this week. Yeah, we're doing this, we're doing that, but you're only thinking about this week. And what you need to do is look at the flow of work between like milestones and deliverables. How are they connecting together? And catch yourself if you're not 100% focused, or catch yourself, sorry, if you are 100% focused on the next big milestone without thinking about how it fits in or how it flows into the next. Because you want to be able to find time as a team, and some of you may be aware of this term, the critical path, looking at how the really important stuff is flowing through that critical path. So that could be looking weeks ahead and potentially months ahead as well, and regularly having those types of conversations rather than just what's the immediate stuff we just got to get done, get to this point. Because if you do that, it will result in less delays on your project, less wasted work, and it just increases the chances that your plan will stick to the timings or timings that make sense for the project still. And this links back to tip 4, where I mentioned about a mistake repeated twice is a decision. Because if you're not thinking in this way, the longer term flow across that critical path, then you might have some small delays at the start after a big event in your project where you don't quite have what you need to get started, or there's a meeting to discuss what we're going to be doing for the next few weeks, all that type of stuff. And it just adds all these small delays, but they all add up. If you're on a long-term project, you are going to have, then it's going to increase the chances of that project is going to be delayed. Or it's going to be time crunched, more pressure, then you might make more mistakes and the quality levels drop, things like that. So the final tip is just thinking about how short-term focused are you on a project at the moment? Are you consistently, and I don't mean like every day or even every week, but making sure that's in part of your process where you are talking about how things are connecting up in the longer term. Okay, that just check in. Is there any other comments in the chat? No, I don't think they are. Let me just summarize. So, number one, what is that why for the project? To help alignment, help decisions. Mark, you mentioned about using the term vision with stakeholders. Yeah, sometimes vision can sound a little bit fluffy and a bit big picture, but if it's all been agreed with like the really key people on the project, you just go back to that. How's that going to help us get to this vision? It really does help in your decision making. Number 2 was think about the questions you're being asked and how regular you're being asked those questions as well, because it might mean that you are too much in control of the information. And that means you're taking away some accountability from the team that you're working with and not using them enough to help you in your planning as well. The question, can it just run for the next 2 weeks? Now, there's a little bit of a few caveats to that one, but ultimately, do people know what's happening? So otherwise, they're going to be too short-term focused, or they're just too reliant on you. And number 4 was, am I repeating the same mistakes? So look for those small mistakes that are happening. Obviously, not just you as the PM, but anyone on the team or the client. Find ways to fix them or improve them. And it's a much more satisfying way to work when you've got that small, incremental, continuous improvement happening on your project. You don't have to wait to the end to do a project wash up and everyone talks about the problem and has a good moan. Traffic light yourself, whether it's traffic lights or you just got some really powerful questions you ask yourself regularly so you can go, oh, hang on a minute. I am feeling like this. I need to do something about it. And you take action before it's too late, whether that's problems on your project or overwhelm or whatever it might be. Ask a project manager or somebody to review your plan or anything else, like Mark was saying as well, deliverables. Such a good way to capture problems. that you might not have seen. Is work part of your evenings too? So if this is like a more of like I'm worrying about work and it's happening most nights, then you need to do something about it because it's not going to get better. And what you need to do is just one, obviously you can get help, but also just simplify it down to what's really important. What should I get done tomorrow that's going to help? And then the next day and the next day. Number eight, is the plan changing too much? That's another red flag to being not in control of what's happening, not controlling communications. But make sure that you recognize it, talk about it, and say, what can we do? And that can include your client as well or stakeholders. Just go, can you help us out here? Because this is happening, this is changing, this is the impact. Any suggestions? What could we tell you? What information could we share with you? And number nine, I'm busy every day. But busy on what? It's very, very easy to be busy, but it's a lot harder to be doing work that really has impact and is valuable. So try to recognize that. Because if you're busy every day, it holds you back in your career as well. You'll look back on the last few months or the year and go, what did I actually do? What did I actually create? What value did I bring? And then that's not a good review you want to be having. So think about that one. Another good question to ask yourself. And then the final one, 10, was are you short-term focused? So when you're really, really busy, just make sure you're not just moving to the next few days, the next week, the next milestone. How are they all connecting up? Because that will impact your plan positively if you are doing that, obviously negatively if you're not. Okay, that is 10 tips to help you with, well, to do a review, to check the health of your project plan and you and your team, like I mentioned at the start. And as I said, that was the one we just done. There's two more talking about managing change tomorrow. Exactly the same format. 10 tips to take you through. Take what you want, ignore the rest, try it out, adapt it, whatever works best for you. And then the final one on Thursday, all at the same time, is going to take you through 10 tips about wrapping up your project, which actually you need to consider much, much further down the line, not just at the end as well. But yeah, it's an interesting one, that one. Okay, so as a reminder, I'll be spinning the wheel tonight to see who's won a free coaching session, and I'll announce it on LinkedIn tomorrow. I think we're all connected on LinkedIn. If you're not, just let me know. If it's somebody who's in the community, then I'll message in there as well and let you know. And I mentioned the project planning bootcamp, so it's going live on Thursday. In terms of sign-ups, that is, to be able to join. And I know there's some people on here that are already interested or shown interest, and it's a 6-week training program, and there's 30 plus on-demand lessons and cover all sorts of different aspects of planning. It's not just like how do you do this, but how do you manage it? What are the communications? And I've got lots more information, which I'll send you a link to shortly about the lessons that are involved in there. There's weekly Q&As. So those who join have the option to join a Q&A every single week where we talk about like what you've learned, what stood out for you, some particular challenges. So obviously I'm on those Q&As. There's a couple a week to make sure there is always an option for you to attend if you want to. I do like a learn with me approach. So I have a couple of one-to-ones during those 6 weeks with everybody who joins to go through anything you've got challenges. And it's like the coaching one-to-one I mentioned before. They're booked in for an hour, but sometimes they do go on longer. It depends how deep we're going to go, but normally it's like an hour and a half max. But they're a good way just to talk about what matters for you, ultimately, not in a group setting, just between the two of us. And maximum of 20 spaces. That's because I can't support any more than that with the one-to-ones and the weekly Q&As. And the last thing is, it's all hosted in the community. So if any of you aren't in the PM community now and you do want to join, I'll share you a link in a moment. But the on-demand lessons are in there. The weekly Q&As are hosted in there. But also during that 6-week period, you can message me at any point if you have any planning emergencies or anything linked to that. And I'll do my best to help as much as I can. Because I know sometimes as a PM, it can be a little bit lonely as well. What do I do in this situation? Those types of challenges. And then the final thing is, if you've got any questions, you can message me in the community. You can DM me on LinkedIn. If you've got my email, you can email me, or you can book a 30-minute call with me. No obligation to obviously then go and sign up or anything like that. It's completely up to you. But a 30-minute call, you can ask me any questions you like about how's this going to work and is this right for me, which is really, really important. So I always encourage everyone to book a call if possible. Don't have to. Um, Only then I can just make sure that it's right for both sides. And then if you want to learn more about the planning boot camp, like the lessons that are in all the modules that I've just mentioned, then scan that one. That just goes to my website and it's the planning boot camp like landing page. There's more information about it on there. That will be where if you do want to join on Thursday, that's where you'll go to sign up for it. At the moment, it's just you can just add yourself to the wait list. And then the final, if you're not part of the community, then you can scan that. That's also in my LinkedIn featured section. There's a link to the community there. There's a bit of information about, it'll take you to the landing page. You have to answer a few questions about what type of project management you're in, any particular challenges, things like that, because it's all really helpful. And as I said, it's just for PMs. So that's it.